Michelle Agyemang is not just a name on the back of a jersey. She is part of a new generation of English footballers redefining what it means to rise through the ranks in one of the world's most competitive sports. Her journey begins with a layered heritage, rooted in Ghanaian culture and planted firmly in the multicultural soil of the United Kingdom.
Hey guys, before we continue, please hit the like button and subscribe. We post weekly documentaries and aim to reach 2,000 subscribers. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Thanks for supporting us. Now, back to the video.
Part 1. Origins, a family's journey, a nation's dream. In the bustling, complex narrative of modern British football, Michelle Agyemang's name is rising, not just as a talented young forward, but as a symbol of multicultural identity, perseverance, and promise. Born on February 19, 2006, in England, Michelle's story is not just hers alone. It is woven into a much larger tapestry of migration, heritage, and the evolving face of British sport. To understand her journey, we must first look at where she came from, not just geographically, but historically and culturally. Michelle Agyemang is of Ghanaian descent, part of the ever-growing British Ghanaian community that has left an indelible mark on British society, particularly in sports. Ghana's relationship with the UK stretches back to the colonial era, when it was known as the Gold Coast under British rule. Following independence in 1957, Ghana experienced waves of political and economic upheaval that spurred significant emigration. Seeking opportunity, stability, and a better life, many Ghanaians moved to the United Kingdom throughout the 1960s, 70s, and beyond. Among them were the ancestors of Michelle Agyemang, part of that hopeful generation that looked to Britain not just as a former colonial power, but as a place to start anew. Settling in cities across England, including London, these families often faced cultural dislocation, racial discrimination, and socio-economic hardship. Yet, despite the obstacles, they built communities, established churches, introduced Ghanaian cuisine to British streets, and raised their children with fierce determination. Michelle was born into this legacy, a second or third generation British Ghanaian, shaped by both worlds. From an early age, she exhibited a sense of drive that hinted at something special. Her family, like many others in the diaspora, balanced deep cultural traditions with integration into British society. Football, the UK's heartbeat, became one of those common bridges between two worlds. Growing up in London, Michelle was immersed in a city that vibrated with diversity and opportunity, but also one that demanded resilience. London is a metropolis where immigrant families often work twice as hard for half the recognition. But it's also a city where talent can rise and ambition can rewrite futures. In this dynamic environment, Michelle took to football like fire to dry grass. She joined local clubs at a young age, showing precocious ability. For many immigrant families, sport can become both an escape and a platform. Michelle's raw speed, vision, and instinct for goal scoring soon set her apart. The structured systems of British youth football, school teams, grassroots clubs, elite academies, became her proving grounds. Her early development caught the attention of Arsenal's scouts. One of England's premier clubs, with a proud history of developing talent through its women's academy, Arsenal represents not just excellence, but access, and Michelle had earned it. Joining the Arsenal youth system was no small feat. The competition is fierce. Thousands dream of wearing the badge. Few make it past the first trials. But Michelle's performances in youth competitions demonstrated maturity beyond her years. Coaches noted not just her technical ability, but her work ethic, attitude, and leadership. She wasn't just another skilled attacker. She was a thinker, a fighter, a team-first player with an edge. By her mid-teens, Michelle was not only progressing through Arsenal's ranks, but also drawing the attention of England as national youth setup. In 2021, she made her debut for the England under-17 women's team, scoring goals and turning heads with her confidence and maturity. It's here that Michelle's journey begins to step into the public light. Her story, the daughter of immigrants rising through one of the world's most competitive football systems, resonates far beyond the pitch. In a world grappling with questions of identity, belonging, and representation, Michelle Agyemang embodies a new generation, British, African, proud, and unafraid. And while the headlines began to write themselves, future Lioness, Arsenal wonder kid, the next big thing, those who knew her kept their gaze steady. The journey was only beginning. Professional football is not a straight line. It's filled with setbacks, politics, injuries, and constant pressure. But if her ancestry had taught Michelle anything, it was how to persist, to dig deep, to remember where she came from, and to let that be her fuel. In her quiet moments, she could likely reflect on her roots, on the Ghanaians who crossed continents with nothing but faith in a better future, on the sacrifices her parents made to support her training and education, on the little girl who once chased balls on a patchy London pitch, dreaming of something bigger. That dream was no longer a fantasy. Initially, Michelle had not only broken into the Arsenal senior women's team in 2022, but had begun to inspire young black girls across the UK who saw themselves in her. She was no longer just playing football. She was carrying history, challenging narratives, and rewriting what it means to be a modern British athlete. But fame and recognition bring their own shadows. As more eyes turned to Michelle, expectations grew. Would she fulfill the prophecy of greatness? Would the pressures of top-tier football derail her path? Could she balance her identity, the weight of a diaspora's hopes, and the ruthless demands of professional sport? Soon, we'll dive deeper into her breakthrough at Arsenal, her international stardom with England youth teams, and the challenges of being a young woman of color in elite football, where talent is often questioned and pressure never sleeps. Part 2. The Making of a Football Prodigy. When Michelle Agyemang laced up her first pair of football boots, they weren't the most expensive or the flashiest, but they were hers, and they carried the weight of generations. The story of Michelle's rise through England's competitive youth football system is one marked not only by raw talent, but by quiet resolve, calculated discipline, and a powerful sense of purpose, rooted in her Ghanaian British identity. By the time Michelle was 8, it was clear she wasn't just another kid kicking a ball around the park. Coaches began to notice her innate understanding of space and timing, her ability to glide past defenders, and a maturity in her decision-making that belied her age. But potential wasn't enough in the ruthless pyramid of English football. Talent needed visibility, and visibility needed opportunity. Michelle's early footballing journey took her through the famed advanced coaching centers run by the Football Association, grassroots hubs where scouts from the nation's top clubs often prowled. Her club at the time, Enfield Town FC, provided her with a platform to test herself in structured, competitive environments. Against older and stronger players, Michelle's natural strength and low center of gravity gave her an edge. But what truly set her apart was her intelligence. She thought like a playmaker, but finished like a striker. At just 12, Michelle was picked up by Arsenal's Girls' Academy, one of the most prestigious youth systems in the UK. It was a seismic shift. From playing on public pitches in North London, she now trained at state-of-the-art facilities, surrounded by national team scouts and development officers. Every session mattered. Every touch was scrutinized. The pressure could have been immense, and at times it was. But Michelle thrived under it. Those long drives across the city, often in the rain, often late into the evening after school, were made bearable by her family's unyielding support. Her mother juggled multiple jobs while ensuring Michelle never missed a training session. Her father, though often at work, would call after every game, demanding to know not just if she scored, but how she played, the details, the weaknesses, the lessons. In the academy environment, Michelle's game matured rapidly. Her goal-scoring numbers were outstanding, but what truly made waves was her versatility. She could operate as a center forward, a wide attacker, or even as a no. 10. Her physicality, especially her ability to shield the ball and brush off defenders, earned comparisons to some of the top names in the Women's Super League. By 14, Michelle was already training with Arsenal's U16s. Her performances began drawing national attention. In a competitive talent pool dominated by elite academy products, Michelle stood out, and in 2021, her big break came. She was selected for England's U15 squad. The call-up was a moment of immense pride, not just for Michelle, but for her entire community. For the Ghanaian British youth watching from the terraces, her rise was proof that their dreams were valid. The England setup introduced Michelle to a new level of intensity. International training camps demanded focus, composure, and elite fitness. She adapted quickly, impressing coaches with her attitude and work ethic. On the pitch, she was clinical, but off the pitch, she was quiet, focused, and humble, traits that earned her the respect of teammates and staff alike. Then came the moment that would propel her name into wider public consciousness: the 2022 UEFA Women's Under-17 Championship qualifiers. Representing England at the U17 level, Michelle delivered standout performances, scoring crucial goals and demonstrating maturity well beyond her years. Her poise in front of goal, ability to lead a press, and eye for a pass marked her as a player to watch. Pundits began whispering about her being England's next breakout star, and Arsenal had been watching. The club, always keen to secure its most promising talents, offered Michelle her first professional contract shortly after she turned 17, a clear signal of how highly she was valued within the club's long-term vision. For a player still in her teens, it was a monumental step. Arsenal, one of the most decorated women's clubs in Europe, was placing its faith in her. But the road wasn't without challenges. Competition at the senior level was fierce. Arsenal's attacking ranks included seasoned internationals, proven match winners with years of experience. For Michelle, minutes on the pitch had to be earned. She found herself balancing the demands of elite sport with the pressures of youth, school, public scrutiny, and social expectations. Her heritage often made her a symbol, a role model for young Black British girls in football. While she embraced the responsibility, it also brought pressure. Every mistake was amplified. Every game came with added eyes, but she handled it all with a grace that belied her years. Off the pitch, Michelle began to use her platform to advocate for better representation in women's football. In interviews, she spoke candidly about the need for diversity at all levels of the sport, from coaching to boardrooms. She credited her success to the strength of her upbringing, her family's sacrifices, and the cultural pride that anchored her. As she entered her late teens, her development accelerated. Under the guidance of Arsenal's coaching staff, she honed her tactical understanding, improved her technical sharpness, and added new dimensions to her game. She began making appearances for Arsenal's first team, often as a late substitute, but each touch was deliberate, each movement calculated. She was learning, she was observing, and she was waiting for her moment. Michelle Agyemang's journey through the ranks wasn't just a story of football development. It was the unfolding of a new chapter in British sport, where the children of immigrants not only belonged but thrived. Her presence in the national conversation symbolized a shifting tide in English football, one that embraced identity, heritage, and excellence on merit. But just as Michelle's name began echoing louder in stadiums and headlines, a decision was looming, one that would shape the future of her career and international legacy. Would she continue to rise as an England international, or would the call of Ghana, the land of her ancestors, sway her allegiance? The next chapter of Michelle's story was about more than just football. It was about identity, loyalty, and legacy. Part 3. Pressure Proving Grounds. And the Arsenal dream. Michelle Agyemang's journey from local grassroots pitches to the elite echelons of English football was not merely the result of raw talent. It was discipline forged in pressure, ambition molded by sacrifices, and opportunity earned through performance. As her teenage years began, the stakes were higher, the competition fiercer, and the expectations heavier. His was no longer casual play in the local park. This was the proving ground of elite youth football, and Michelle was already turning heads. Born to Ghanaian parents in London in 2005, Michelle had already been training within Arsenal's Centre of Excellence, one of the most competitive football development programs in the country. Arsenal Women, one of the most decorated clubs in Europe, didn't just admit anyone. The players who entered this system were selected, groomed, and relentlessly tested. It wasn't enough to be good, you had to be exceptional. And exceptional, Michelle was. She was 13 when she first started attracting national attention. Coaches and scouts noticed her technical ability, quick feet, intelligent movement, and most of all, her calmness under pressure. While other players rushed shots or got lost in the noise of the moment, Michelle played like she had time. Her awareness was advanced beyond her age group, her positional understanding precise. She wasn't just playing the game, she was thinking it. But talent can only take a young footballer so far. Michelle was balancing rigorous training schedules with schoolwork, weekend matches, and family expectations. The Agyemangs weren't a wealthy family. While deeply supportive, her parents had to navigate long work hours and tight finances to ensure Michelle made it to training and tournaments. Each journey to Arsenal's Hale End or Colney training grounds was a reminder. This was a family investment. At age 14, Michelle's performances earned her a place in England's youth national teams. This was a huge step, one that placed her on an international stage. In 2019, she began featuring in England U15s, where she quickly established herself as a key figure. The shirt she wore now represented more than a club. It was the flag, the badge. The weight of national expectation. She was representing not just her family or her club, but a country. But as she progressed, something else began to emerge: pressure. Elite pathways often come with immense mental stress. Teammates become competitors, and any misstep can derail years of progress. For many young female players, adolescence becomes the point at which careers either soar or stall. Injuries, loss of form, academic pressure, and even burnout often hit hardest at this stage. Michelle, however, showed resilience. Coaches praise her humility and focus. She wasn't drawn into off-pitch drama or the false confidence that fame can bring. Instead, she dug in. Her commitment to her craft became more visible. Whether it was extra gym sessions, studying her game footage, or simply working on finishing drills after everyone had left the pitch, Michelle stayed the course. 2021 was a breakthrough year. Aged just 16, Michelle signed her first professional contract with Arsenal Women. It was a significant moment, not just for her but for the club and aspiring players watching around the country. She became one of the youngest players ever to sign with Arsenal's senior team. The announcement rippled across sports media. Arsenal signs teenage sensation Michelle Agyemang. But this wasn't a marketing move. Michelle was already training with the senior squad and making waves. Despite her age, she displayed maturity on the pitch. Her forward play was powerful, direct, and intelligent. Arsenal's coaches recognized that Michelle was not just a player for the future. She was a player of the now. That same year, she played in the England U17 setup, scoring goals, captaining the side, and continuing to develop her leadership skills. She was also emerging as a role model for young Black British girls, especially those with Ghanaian heritage, who rarely saw themselves reflected in elite women's football. Michelle was aware of this. In interviews, she spoke with gratitude about her roots, her parents' sacrifices, and the importance of representation. Behind the scenes, however, Michelle continued to face the silent grind of professional sport. Competing for minutes in a star-studded Arsenal squad wasn't easy. Every forward position was contested by international-level players. But Michelle was not deterred. She used each training session as an audition, every substitute appearance as a platform. In early 2023, Arsenal made the strategic decision to loan her out to Watford Women FC, a move designed to give her more first-team experience. Some viewed it as a test, others saw it as a stepping stone. Michelle took it as a challenge and responded. At Watford, she became an immediate standout. Her performances were mature, impactful, and increasingly decisive. She scored goals, created assists, and brought a new energy to the squad. Watford fans noticed, Arsenal fans took note, and pundits began to say aloud what many had whispered for months: Michelle Agyemang is the future of English football. Off the pitch, Michelle remained grounded. She continued her academic education alongside football and remained closely connected to her roots. Her parents, never ones to bask in attention, quietly attended matches, supporting their daughter with the same quiet strength that had gotten her to this point. The Ghanaian community in London rallied around her, watching with pride as one of ours climbed into national prominence as 2024 approached. The landscape was shifting. Women's football in England was booming, record attendances, television deals, increased visibility. And in the midst of it all stood Michelle, no longer just a young hopeful, but a name to remember. The pressure was still there, so were the challenges. But Michelle had already shown the world what she was made of. She had risen from humble beginnings to Arsenal's pitch, and yet, she was still just getting started. The story of Michelle Agyemang was no longer about potential. It was becoming legacy. Part 4. Stepping into the spotlight. By 2024, Michelle Agyemang was no longer just a name on the rise. She was a rising force in women's football. At just 18 years old, she had already done what many could only dream of: signed professionally for one of the most iconic football clubs in Europe, earned her stripes with England's youth teams, and shown that she could compete in the demanding world of senior football. But with recognition came new expectations. The next chapter of Michelle's journey would be defined not just by her potential, but by how she delivered under pressure. This wasn't about promise anymore. It was about proof. Watford loan. Learning in the fire. Michelle's 2023 loan to Watford Women's FC in the FA Women's National League was strategic. Arsenal wanted her to experience regular senior minutes, something difficult to guarantee within their stacked squad. For Michelle, this move wasn't a step down. It was an opportunity to lead from the front. She quickly adapted to the league's physicality and tactical complexity. Unlike youth football, there were no soft touches here. Defenders were older, stronger, more experienced, and yet Michelle held her own. She scored goals. She created space. She drew fouls. Her vision and composure, already strong, only sharpened. Watford coaches praised her work ethic. She didn't show up like a teenage prodigy expecting special treatment. She trained hard. She asked questions. She learned from veterans. Michelle's time at Watford hardened her game, refined her grit, and made one thing clear: she belonged in senior football. By the time she returned to Arsenal, Michelle had made her mark. Watford wanted her back, but Arsenal had other ideas. Back at Arsenal, chasing a place among giants. Returning to Arsenal women's training grounds was like returning to the lion's den. The squad was elite, filled with full internationals and Champions League players. Competition for a starting spot was brutal, but Michelle came back different. She wasn't the same teenager who had nervously entered the senior training sessions a year ago. She was stronger, smarter, hungrier. While breaking into the starting she was still a challenge, Michelle began featuring more frequently in cup games and pre-season matches. Her performance in the 2024 Continental Cup caught attention: smart runs, sharp finishing, and a visible maturity on the ball. Though she wasn't yet a regular starter, Arsenal saw what was coming. They doubled down on her development. Senior players mentored her. Coaches worked closely on positioning, hold-up play, and decision-making. Every touch, every run, every chance, Michelle was studying it all. Behind closed doors, the club was making it clear. She was not just part of the future. She was the future. England calls again. A star in the making. Parallel to her club development was her continued progress in England's youth national teams. Having featured in the U15, U16, U17, and U19 squads, Michelle had become a familiar face in St. George's Park camps. But in 2024, she began earning minutes with England's U23s, a key bridge to the senior Lionesses squad. These were elite matches, often against other top European sides. It was here that Michelle began to stand out, not just as a scorer, but as a leader. She captained on occasion, controlled tempo, and lifted her teammates with her energy. Coaches took notice of her mentality. She was humble yet confident. She asked for feedback, watched game tape religiously, and displayed a quiet determination. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but it was relentless. Whispers began circulating in the media. When will Michelle Agyemang get her senior England debut? With England manager Serena Wiegman keeping an eye on the youth pipeline, Michelle's name was increasingly on the radar. The public eye. Role model status. While her game developed, so did her public image. Michelle was becoming a face of the new generation of English women's footballers, young, diverse, powerful, and proud. And for many young black British girls, she was an emblem of visibility. In interviews, Michelle remained thoughtful and grounded. She often mentioned her Ghanaian roots and the sacrifices her parents made. She didn't shy away from speaking on representation in sport. She acknowledged the importance of role models and how she hoped to inspire others, especially those who might not see themselves in mainstream sporting success stories. Her social media presence grew, though she kept it professional. No controversies. No drama, just football, family, and purpose. In 2024, she was invited to speak at several youth events where she discussed balancing education and sport, staying focused, and staying true to your values in a high-pressure world. Brands noticed. Sponsorships followed. Nike featured her in a youth campaign. Local community programs invited her to participate. But Michelle remained focused. Football first. Setbacks and staying the course. Like all professional athletes, Michelle faced setbacks. Minor injuries occasionally sidelined her. Selection decisions sometimes left her benched. And criticism, however mild, crept in from fans who expected more. But Michelle never buckled under pressure. She used those moments to refocus, to train harder, to prove doubters wrong. She was learning not just how to play, but how to last. One pivotal moment came in late 2024 when Arsenal played Chelsea in a tense WSL match. Michelle was subbed in with 15 minutes left, and the score was 1-1. In the 88th minute, she made a blistering run past two defenders and delivered a cross that led to the winning goal. The crowd erupted. Cameras zoomed in. The commentators hailed her as the spark Arsenal needed. It wasn't a goal, but it felt like one. More importantly, it was a message. She's ready. The bigger picture. Ghana and the future. As Michelle's star continued to rise, questions emerged about international allegiance. Having represented England at all youth levels, the natural assumption was that she would join the Lionesses' senior ranks in time. But Ghana was watching too. The Ghana Football Association publicly expressed interest in bringing Michelle into the Black Queen's setup. With both nations competing for her commitment, Michelle's dual heritage put her in a powerful position. But she didn't rush the decision. For her, it wasn't just about caps, it was about legacy. In an interview, she simply said, "I'm proud of my roots. I'm grateful for the opportunities both England and Ghana represent. When the time comes, I'll follow what feels right in my heart." It was a diplomatic, mature answer, and true to her style, measured, respectful, focused. On the brink of something bigger by early 2025, Michelle Agyemang was no longer a rising star. She was a known force, a player that clubs feared, fans adored, and pundits praised. She had built her reputation through consistent growth, quiet leadership, and standout performances. But she was also standing at a crossroads. Would she cement herself in Arsenal's starting lineup? Would the senior England call-up finally arrive? Would she choose Ghana and become a national icon? One thing was certain. Michelle's story was no longer just about where she came from. It was about where she was headed, and the world was watching. Part 5. The Legacy in Motion. By the dawn of 2025, Michelle Agyemang had become a name that resonated far beyond the boundaries of the pitch. She had transcended the typical expectations of a teenage footballer. Her story had become a powerful metaphor for progress, for hope, and for the undeniable power of persistence. Yet despite all her achievements, Michelle's journey was far from over. This wasn't the climax. It was the beginning of her next chapter. The decision looms, England or Ghana? As she continued to shine for Arsenal and the England youth setup, the football world eagerly awaited a definitive answer to one burning question. Which senior national team would she choose? By 2025, Michelle had already played for England at every youth level. from U15 through U23. She'd worn the badge, sung the anthem, and lifted trophies with the young Lionesses. She was a product of the FS investment in youth football, and she had become a symbol of the future of English women's football. But Ghana had not given up. The Ghana Football Association made their approach public in late 2024, inviting Michelle and her family for a visit, offering a leadership role in the Black Queens setup. There, she wouldn't just be another name on the team sheet. She'd be a star, a centerpiece, a leader of a footballing resurgence in her ancestral land. It was more than just football. It was a call to legacy. Her response? She remained silent. Not because she didn't care, but because she did. This wasn't a decision to make for headlines. It was a decision rooted in identity and heritage and in what she ultimately wanted her story to represent. Behind the scenes, Michelle spoke with both federations. She considered her options carefully, listening not just to agents and coaches, but also to her heart and her family. More than a player, a platform for purpose. As Michelle matured, she grew into more than just an elite athlete. She became a voice for young black girls in England navigating spaces where they often felt invisible. A voice for the children of immigrants chasing dreams bigger than their postcode. A voice for representation in sports that, until recently, had struggled to reflect the communities that adored it. In interviews, Michelle spoke openly about the challenges she faced, not in bitterness, but in clarity. She talked about being the only black girl on some youth teams, about the pressure of stereotypes, and about the pride she felt walking into a locker room carrying her Ghanaian last name. "I want young girls to know," she said in one BBC Sport interview, "that you don't have to change who you are to succeed. In fact, it's being yourself that gets you there." These weren't just sound bites. Michelle backed them up with action. She partnered with grassroots organizations, mentored young players in North London, and regularly returned to the Arsenal Academy to speak to younger girls just starting out. One local coach said, "She never forgot where she came from, and because of that, she's going somewhere truly great." On the field, a new season, a new role. Arsenal entered the 2025 season with renewed ambition, and Michelle was no longer the teenage prospect waiting for minutes. She was part of the plan. Mikel Arteta, speaking about the club's holistic vision, even referenced Michelle as an example of what a cross-club culture of development looked like. The women's team head coach spoke of her elevated football IQ, her ability to create in tight spaces, and her elite mentality. In a pre-season tournament, she scored twice against PSG Feminine and notched an assist against Juventus Women. The media took notice, but her teammates weren't surprised. "She's always been this good," said one senior player. Now the world is just catching up. Her minutes increased. Her role expanded. She wasn't just a late-game substitute. She was starting big matches, trusted with leading the line or drifting wide depending on the tactical setup. And with every touch, Michelle reminded everyone why the hype was never exaggerated. Her hold-up play had matured. Her link-up with midfielders was sharp. Her decision-making, once raw, was now ruthlessly efficient. More than talent, she had presence. Wembley again, coming full circle. In mid-2025, Michelle found herself back at Wembley Stadium, not as a fan, not as a youth player and a curtain raiser, but as a starting forward for Arsenal in the Women's FA Cup final. The same stadium where, years earlier, she had stood in the shadows as a substitute during the youth final, now stood before her like a coliseum waiting for a queen. This time the Ghanaian flag waved proudly in the stands. This time thousands chanted her name. And this time she delivered. In the 68th minute, with the game tied 1-1 against Manchester United, Michelle received the ball just outside the box, spun her defender with trademark strength, and unleashed a shot into the top corner. Arsenal won the cup. Michelle was named player of the match. She didn't celebrate wildly. She stood still, eyes closed, arms wide, as if to say, "This is what we came for." Legacy mode, the bigger picture. What made Michelle's story special wasn't just her stats or her trophies. It was what she represented. In her, we saw a reflection of thousands of immigrant families who came to the UK chasing a better life. We saw the sacrifices of her parents who left behind familiarity to raise children in a world they barely understood. We saw the inner city community that nurtured her. We saw the coaches who believed in her, the teammates who competed with her, and the fans who rallied behind her. Michelle was no longer just a player. She was a symbol. In Ghana, young girls wore her name on the backs of their kits, even though she hadn't yet declared for the national team. In England, she became part of the national conversation around women's sport, diversity, and youth development. And globally, she was now watched not just by scouts, but by storytellers, dreamers, and believers who saw in her something familiar, the power of rising from the margins to the center stage. The final note, still becoming? If there's one truth about Michelle Agyemang's journey, it's this. She's still becoming. She's still rising. She's still writing her story, step by step, game by game. Her rise has not been meteoric. It's been earned through quiet discipline, bold choices, and a love for football that burns through every match. And while the world will one day debate her legacy, her impact on the game, her international choice, her titles and records, Michelle knows the deeper truth. She never set out to be famous. She set out to play, to honor her roots, to carry her family's dream. And in doing so, she's inspired a generation. What do you think is the most fascinating thing about Michelle? Drop in the comments.